Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.
Welcome everyone to issue 2 of 4 here in the Matty Loves Podcast giant-sized annual. I am your host, Matt D. Simone. Here in December, we're taking a break from the usual format as we're doing an annual, just compiling just some stuff that we wanted to do before the year was out. And what I'm doing right now is one of those things. Joined with me today is Simone Caroti, author, teacher, science fiction master. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody.
Now, just briefly, just to give y'all a brief introduction of Simone, I met Simone down here, as I like to refer to, training in a Jedi temple, and Simone is who I consider to be one of the members of the Jedi Council down here, as I am trying to become a Master Jedi. So he along with Tom and a few others are constantly judging my actions of adventure and excitement.
I'll be trying to say wise things today.
Yeah. So, a little bit about you, Simone. You are a Boilermaker.
I am. When I moved from Italy, where I was born, I moved to go to Purdue University in Indiana, home of the Boilermakers, to pursue a master's and a PhD in comparative literature with a specialization in science fiction, which I duly did. I got my master's in 2004, my PhD in 2009, and then I greatly expanded, I have to say, and substantially reworked my dissertation, which became my first book. My first book, a work on the Generation Starship concept in science fiction, came out in 2011. And my second book, which is a kind of an introduction to Ian Banks's Culture series, which is a space opera series in the high technology mold, that came out in March of this year of 2015. Now I'm working on a third book on cyberpunk, on the subgenre of cyberpunk, and I'm trying to get busy with other things as well. I've been writing reviews lately, and teaching, obviously.
Right.
Teaching, obviously.
Well, going back to like Purdue, what were some of your favorite things about going to Purdue, or the area? Like, give me a layout of what the area.
I like the airport. Coming from Italy, I mean, in Italy, a university is just a bunch of buildings.
Okay.
And you go and take class, and then they kick you out because they can't stand to see you for more than 2 hours at a time.
Okay.
And then you go home. There is no the idea of a university spirit is actually quite alien to the Italian experience of academics. So first of all, it was the university's spirit that really struck me as impressive, because I was absolutely not used to it. And then the idea that a university would be essentially the size of a town, have its own fire department, its own police station, and its own airport, there was a Boeing 737 with on the tarmac with the university logo,
right,
stamped on the tail, onto the tail, and I found that phenomenal. It was just literally another place, and the rest of it was just the things that I loved were most, I would say, of my teachers, most of the classes that I took, and the chance to essentially prepare for a situation in which people might want to pay me to talk about stuff I gladly discuss for free, because I've lucked out. This is my dream. I mean, I've always wanted to talk about this stuff my entire life.
Right.
Yeah. So that's me told.
So did you ever have any of the Big Ten experience there? Did you go to any sporting events?
Yeah.
Did you go to football games?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did, and I
You took it all in, pretty much. Like, you got there and you immersed yourself in.
Well, not quite. Well, it's easier. the university experience, to a certain extent, is for undergraduates. When you're a grad student, you are expected to maintain an altogether more aloof attitude, which was, of course, hogwash because everybody did whatever the hell they wanted.
Right.
But see, it like another thing was the Boilermakers. The team. The football team, and then there was they have an impressive basketball team. The female basketball team is incredible. They have a great oh, come on. So basketball, they have a great baseball team too. Yeah. So I was interested. Yeah, but I come from one of the historic soccer countries. Right. So getting into the whole football mindset was a little bit difficult for me. But I will say that if I have a university team to root for, that is Purdue. Of course the Boilers. Yeah. Right. Now if they could win, that would be nice.
Yeah. Purdue seems like I remember Gene Kading, the old coach of Purdue. Yes. When I was a kid, man. I mean, Purdue was a powerhouse in basketball. And
Gene Kading is still remembered today and he'll be remembered forever because as long as there's Purdue, Gene Kading will have a place in the Hall of Fame, as you well should.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it was and for me it was in Europe. There's a lot of angst and a lot of real, honest to God anger, and very often violence. Sometimes terminal violence, lethal violence connected to soccer. So, for example, going to a soccer stadium is something that I didn't used to do because I just want to watch the game. Right. I do not want to get into a confrontation over two soccer teams or two anything teams. It's a sport. It is not a matter of life and death. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised and very glad to see that the American attitude to sports is much, much closer to that of it's close to joy. It's a chance to paint yourself in silly masks and root for your team. It's a much healthier attitude.
I always feel like that it's like there's a sense of community. When you're going to especially college football, going to college football games. There's a really nice sense of community there.
There is,
and it's crazy that you say that about you were afraid to go to soccer games when you were growing up. Was it just because you were afraid to be in the stands and pump your fist and the wrong person sees you and decks you, or?
No. I was really not the type
or being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Is that kind of?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, like for example, you get out of the stadium at the wrong time. And you risk getting caught between the two sides, who are squaring off, and they don't, and by the time they've worked themselves into that kind of frenzy, they don't really do bystanders. They do allies and they do enemies, and so more than one person who was just there to watch the game. And I root for a team. I have a few teams that I like.
You like Juventus, right?
No, actually, I root for AS Roma, which means that I am expected to consider Juventus only slightly above an Ebola outbreak. You are not supposed to love Juventus if you
so it's kind of like the Cowboys and the Redskins here in America,
Yeah.
If you're a Cowboys fan, you pretty much despise the Redskins, no matter how bad they are.
Or in baseball, if you're a Red Sox fan,
Yankees.
Yeah, and anybody, and you see a Yankees cap, you are supposed to take it as a slight on your honor.
Now, who is AC Roma? Are they always kind of like second fiddle to Juventus?
Well, in terms of history, absolutely. Juventus is the
they're the
winningest. Is that a word? Winningest
yes.
Team in the history of the Italian soccer league.
The running refs. They look like a bunch of referees with the stripes on.
I got to this country. Why are all the refs Juventus fans? And then I realized that they paint them like that. It's not their fault. They didn't ask. But historically, so Juventus trumps everybody. because they've probably won more titles of in the Italian league than
AC Milan,
the next 15 teams together.
Okay.
So there is that. But lately, over the last 10, 15 years, AS Roma has been doing well for itself. So there's reason to be happy. So to the extent that I do follow any soccer at all, because I'm here in the United States, soccer was never...
It's tough here in the United States to follow. It really is. I mean, ESPN, they try, to give us coverage or whatever, but, I mean, even as a person that isn't like a devout follower of soccer, I can definitely tell that they really scrape the bottom of the barrel to get these guys on the show.
Yeah, they do.
There's no proven talent. In my opinion, there's no proven talent anywhere that's a sports analyst. It makes no sense.
And my wife and I don't even have a TV. We don't have cable, so we ended up watching the 2014 World Cup on
computer,
on Telemundo. Oh. Everything was in Spanish, and we every time somebody scored, we my wife and I would start yelling "goal," trying to outlast the announcer, because if you're a Hispanic announcer and you're announcing soccer, one of the things that you have to do is, and when everybody scores a goal, you go goal. Yeah. And actually, I found out that you're supposed to begin with an M. It's like go, and then you go on, and then you go. So the etiquette is that, and my wife and I were trying to outgoal the guy, and it worked beautifully for our lungs, I have to say. So yeah, this is my history with soccer. I really like soccer, but I don't like soccer fans.
Well, you just mentioned your wife. Did you meet her at Purdue? Yeah, you did.
At a coffee shop, which is where everything that happened to me happened at the time.
Really?
Yeah, because it. What
was the place called?
Cafe Vienna.
Cafe Vienna.
Well, yeah, and it's actually a connection to the Middle European tradition of the coffee shop at the turn of the century, between the 19th and the 20th, that is, and right before the civilization of Europe decided to commit collective suicide with World War I. There was in Central Europe, especially in northern Italy, Austria, and Prague and other cities like that, which were all part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, this tradition of doing your intellectual work at the coffee shop. You went to this, and they were palaces. They weren't just coffee shops. There are places in Trieste, where my hometown in Italy, where coffee shops are twice the size of the ale house down the street. And they are like marble columns and your carpet and everything is mahogany. It's insane. And back in the day, the great intellectuals of their time, people like Arthur Schnitzler, for example, or even Sigmund Freud, would go to the coffee shop to work. They would literally work, and they would discuss politics, art, everything. Right. And so the coffee shop had become this community of discourse that truly created an aesthetic, that truly created art, that generated meaning. Because what we really mean when we say I'm trying to do art is I am trying to make meaning out of a collection of things that alone do not necessarily have meaning, but I'm bringing them together. So that wonderful, phenomenally tolerant and beautiful culture of the coffee shop, which was essentially immolated in the pyre of World War I, remains as a dream and as something in the minds of a lot of people like me, because Italians, Austrians, and everything. There is that sense, and because back then when I arrived in the U.S., I did not know anybody and I needed friends. I didn't want to be alone.
Right.
And I didn't want to be in my room continuously, because that was a ticket to loneliness.
Right.
And then self-harm, like for example, listen to too many Michael Bolton songs or things like that.
Right.
Which and that is the gateway to self-annihilation, because it's.
Well, tell me you were listening to a little bit of the Bolton back then.
Yeah, but only when I was contemplating
All right.
self-destruction as a theoretical way out. But it was I arrived on at 10 p.m. On the 6th of August 2002. The next day, I had already found my coffee shop, and that was Cafe Vienna. Actually, no, that was the second day. The first day, I got to another coffee shop, didn't like it that much, went to the next one, perfect. And I spent the whole time there. I mean, my 8 years at Purdue, that was my second apartment. That was my other apartment, my other office,
Right.
Really. And
you're taking a cue from, like, you know, Freud, like you were saying, in the
yeah, the idea that you can have truly meaningful conversations in front of a cup of coffee, because everybody comes to the coffee shop to study,
Right.
to work, and when you have to engage in that kind of work, you are ready to transform that discourse into something that is on the page or on the computer screen, as the case may be. So in my mind, I was reliving that. Now, it's not exactly the same going to the coffee shop in Vienna and going to the coffee shop in West Lafayette, Indiana. Not the same thing. So it was, and I'm not exactly a Middle European intellectual of the turn of the century. Right. I wasn't born at the right time, but it was close enough that it made me happy because a lot of people were there, and when I made friends.
Yeah.
And my greatest and best friend for life is, in fact, my wife, whom I met on a date that a common friend set up. We were set up.
Wow.
Yeah. And she told us later, we thought you were just guys who were just gonna have some fun and everything. It's like, I think you went and got married. And she said,
right.
She was. I don't know if she was more outraged or awed at the fact that we just hit it off immediately, and it was like, all right, fine.
Yeah, that didn't work the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Well,
so this is.
And that's what brought you, I mean, obviously here to Florida.
Yes, because it turns out that my wife is she's a plant biologist at Kennedy Space Center. So the stuff that I talk about, she does. Right. She is
science fiction.
She literally is made of science fiction.
Yes.
Our listeners may have seen on YouTube videos of the astronauts on the ISS recently eating some lettuce that had been grown inside a growth chamber in space. That, by the way, was the very, very first time in the history of mankind when human beings ate vegetables not grown on Earth. My wife is the head scientist of the team that designed that growth chamber. So, we're talking about a level of engagement and of it's in my house, the future is now.
Do you ever like seriously ask her about, like, what is this, like, how does this work, can you explain? Do you ever ask her to explain?
Jaya volunteers plenty of explanations which are fascinating, to the extent that I can follow it, because
that you can at least follow it.
Well, I may have a PhD in comparative literature. She has a PhD in plant biology, and I'm telling you, it is not intuitive. It's not. You really need a PhD to do that. So.
Wow, that is amazing. That is really amazing.
It is, and she's been interviewed a number of times. I think she's the most self-critical person I know. So she almost doesn't like me talking about her like that, because she feels that I'm making too much of her. But the truth is, I'm not.
She's awesome, and also too, I consider that so important. Like yeah. That is doing things like that, and still proving that science is so far from being completely, figured out like some people think. It's just truly amazing, and it just fascinated me with someone who I consider to be I love having conversations with you. I always learn something new every
Thank
single
you.
time.
It's reciprocated. Thank you very much.
We speak, and then finding out that your wife works for NASA, I was like, well, I guess that kind of makes sense. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of conversations in that household some days.
Well, you may not need to, because if I remember correctly, we are going to go to watch episode 7 together.
Oh yes, I know, and I can't wait to meet your wife.
And Joya is coming. She because if she's not, I'm tying her up and dragging her with me. So yeah, it'll be, and speaking with her is it is a lesson, but not the kind of lesson you resent. It's you with her, there's always she opens up doors you didn't know you had in your head. That's kind of her, that's one of her qualities.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Now going back to a little bit of your work here in the science fiction, can you just briefly explain to me what is the Generation Starship in science fiction? A Critical History, 1934 to 2001.
Rule number one of books of literary criticism: the longer and duller the title, the better your publisher will like it. I'd found something much better. They didn't want it.
What was the original title?
Theater of Memory Against the Background of Stars. I was really stoked about that one.
We'll just save
it. Yeah. Well, I used it for another paper which I published before because. Never mind. I knew they weren't going to afford it, but it's okay, because the important thing is in a work of literary criticism is to flag exactly what you're going to be talking about, because otherwise it gets confusing. So fair enough. The Generation Starship is an idea that was born in the immediate aftermath of Einstein's discovery of general relativity. Special relativity. In 1905, Einstein proved to our crushing disappointment that there was no way to floor the accelerator and continue going faster and faster and faster. The light speed was an absolute, because it turns out the greater the speed, the greater the mass of the object that is pushing at that speed. At light speed, the mass of any object that has a starting mass higher than 0, which means a grain of sand, which is microscopically greater than 0, would still acquire the same mass as a
starship.
Imagine the freedom of the seas, or one of those gigantic cruise ships that you find in Port Canaveral.
Right.
Imagine that going at that speed. That, or a grain of sand, would at some point, hitting light speed, their mass would go to infinite. Now, you cannot have infinite mass, which is why you cannot push anything that is made of anything other than radiation, light, to the speed of light. C, which is 186,000 miles per second, will always be impossible to reach. Because in order to push infinite mass, you would need infinite energy. We will never have infinite energy. And that is the greatest shackle, because we are not, as a species, we are not used to being told we can't do this. And Einstein's theory of relativity seems to, which is not a theory anymore, it's relativity.
It's relative.
Yeah, seems to have killed that dream for us. Except not really, because now we are finding loopholes and other potential ways of bypassing that. So there is good hope that we will one day indeed not break the law of relativity, because it cannot be broken, but circumvent it.
Right.
However, because the job of the science fiction writer is to imagine potential future solutions to today's problems.
Yes.
Some people, including scientists, because it always begins with scientists, because the speculative work is identical to the writer of science fiction. The difference is that a scientist tries to make it real. A writer of science fiction writes a story that spins a moral argument on it.
Right.
But the intellectual work, the speculative work, is pretty much the same. So what we have here is an idea that if we cannot beat time in the sense of getting there quickly, we can maybe beat time at its own game by transforming our starship into a world, a man-made world, a man-made biosphere with everything needed inside to live, fully self-sufficient, capable of, for example, harvesting resources as it goes, and
you're not just talking about like some space command center here. You're talking about a legit living,
yep,
breathing starship that people can sustain a complete life on.
Exactly, because they will have to.
Right.
The closest star system is the Alpha Centauri system, which is a trinary system, Alpha, Beta, and Proxima. That's 4.3 light years away. At current speeds, it will take us several thousands of years to get there. At current speeds, imagining that we could somehow push it to say half light speed, it would take us the better part of 10 years just to get there.
Right.
You cannot hope to maintain meaningful connections across these distances, because a message that left Earth with anything from an upgrade, whatever, to a critical system on the ship would reach the ship 8 years later, by which point we would either have solved the problem on our own or we would be long dead.
Down, gone, yeah.
So the idea is this is essentially self-sufficient worldlet, populated and inhabited by a number of people, between 200 and 1,000, something like that. But I've read stories with many that feature many more people. Mm-hmm. And so the Starship would actually stop being a ship, because the idea of a ship is implicit in the notion of a ship is that the ship will need to reach port. We don't build on Earth. We don't build ships to be completely self-sufficient. First of all,
stay out in the water, right?
Yeah. First of all, because it is not necessary. Secondly, because we don't want that. Because if the ships could just keep going, in the long run, the crew would see themselves as ship people, not Americans or Italians or Chinese or Japanese or Australian or whatever. They would see themselves as belonging to the nation formed by the ship, a tiny nation to be sure, but that was so. We need our ship to depend on us, because they have to think of us as home, and it matters because these days, if you're on board a carrier battle group, you're going to be at sea for 6 months.
Yeah.
And even when you reach port, it'll be a foreign port. And the whole point is that our merchant marine and our military and our navy, they are extension of this country's will. Okay, they protect this country and keep it and nurture it by keeping open the flow of commerce and everything. So we must not at any cost have make these ships completely self-sufficient.
Right.
Because why land at that point?
Exactly.
And the same thing happens in space. That is magnified because the distances are such that either we get the warp drive, but even the Enterprise in Star Trek takes a number of days to get anywhere,
right,
or a number of hours. So either we get that, or we are stuck with the necessity of creating creating a ship that once is gone, it's gone. Because, and that's part of the problem. Who would build a ship like that, knowing that that ship will come back 400 years from now? Who would make the investment? And so the series of stories that the Generation Starship template has generated since 1934, when the first was published, has been an exploration of this idea. Can we implement it? Should we implement it? If so, how and why? What would happen to the people on board? How would they change? 15 generations on, and a long way from Earth, would the inhabitants of the ship even remember Earth? Because they're born on the ship.
Right.
Why would they...
What does it matter?
What does it matter? Exactly. Yeah. If they decide to change course, and instead of going to the planet we originally wanted them to, they just keep going.
Yeah.
What are we going to do to them? Nothing.
Right.
So the idea of the Generation Starship is a powerful notion, because it transforms some of our axiomatic assumptions about what a ship is and a mission is into something completely different because suddenly the mission becomes your life. A mission is something you do, and then you go back to your life.
Right.
In the case of Generation Starship, your mission is live out your life while this thing takes you there. That's it. Most generations will never even see destination. Only one, maybe two will.
Right.
That's it.
Wow.
So and there are fascinating stories about Generation Starship. It's a gorgeous genre, and the first scientist to formulate the idea
Was in 1934. Is that where the 1934 comes
There
in?
was 1928. It was the Russian pioneer of rocket flight. His name was Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, and he in this philosophical paper entitled "The Future of Earth and Mankind," he postulated these. He called them Noah's Arks, because he said one day the Earth will die. We know that. So one day we will need to be able to go out, to be able to go away, and then on that day we will create these worlds, and we will inhabit these worlds, and we will expand across the galaxy, and so humanity will be safe. Our legacy will remain safe. So that was his idea, and then, despite the fact that no one knew even of his existence until the 50s, the idea percolated. Ideas always percolated. Maybe you don't know who had the idea, but the idea itself, the meme, we would call it today, has a way of getting out, even out of Stalinist Russia, which is quite the feat.
Right.
And in 1934, Lawrence Manning wrote a brief 8-page short story published in Wonder Stories, with one of the pulp magazines. It was entitled "The Living Galaxy."
And that was what came from
1934.
34. So that's pretty much, you chose 1934 as the starting point because in your mind that pretty much was.
Yeah, the first chapter is dedicated to the scientific pioneers of the concept. It was Goddard, the American pioneer of rocketry, Tsiolkovsky, and then John Desmond Burnell, who expanded on the idea of the Generation Starship. John Desmond Burnell.
Were all these guys ever like in the same room together?
Absolutely not. They
Oh
mostly didn't know.
my gosh, of course not.
Goddard was in fact so paranoid about people stealing his research that he would not collaborate with anybody. So both Tsiolkovsky and Goddard, in their own way, had a tiny impact. The people who really had an impact were, and this is just our luck, the Germans at the time, Willy Ley, and of course Werner von Braun. Not necessarily the nicest of people, but there you have it.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. But the idea of the scientist was predicated upon a certain set of hopefully actionable ideas. Science fiction took it and ran with it because it was interested in how would that change us? How would that change mankind? How would that change our life? Because this is the whole point of science fiction. There's this known process, okay, in genetics and technology, in ecology, whatever you want, and then you go, well, where would we go from here if this happened? It's extrapolation, it's speculation,
right?
And so in the tomorrows we want or the tomorrows we dread, we find cautionary tales or instruction manuals, hopefully, to maybe go in that direction, and we argue the things that really matter, the ethics of doing or not doing what we can do, okay? Because these days we can do plenty of things. Should we do them?
Sure, sure. Now, and then your cutoff in this is 2001. Is there any specific reason why you stopped at 2001?
Well, at the time I was writing, it was 2009.
Okay.
2001 was the end of the trilogy that kind of closed the 20th century, the 20th century stories of science fiction and fantasy. Of Generation Starship. Science fiction and fantasy are alive and well. In that and in fact, the last book, Return to the Whirl, WHORL, was published not long before 9/11, which itself is the event that closed the door on the 20th century and ushered in the 21st. So it was a natural stopping point, because my job was not to give the latest updates. It was just to reflect on a century and everything. Although in my last chapter, I do have an overview of the work done since 2001.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
so I've done a little bit more work than that. I've analyzed the story from 2005, a beautiful novel by Ken MacLeod entitled "Learning the World." But yeah, but Gene Wolfe's series, the Book of the Long Sun and the Book of the Short Sun, together, 7 novels in total, they represent the longest sustained Generation Starship narrative, and also because Gene Wolfe is the writer he is, a compendium of every generation story ever written, because Wolfe has this ability to condense the eras of science fiction into his novels in a way that you're not just reading the story, you're also reading the history of the genre, which is, well, again, we're talking about Gene Wolfe, and Gene Wolfe is arguably our greatest artist right now, and probably ever so far.
Well, cool. That definitely, and I hope for the listeners, that kind of sheds a little bit of light on what you like to write about, and what you're into, as far as, the Generation Starship genre of science fiction.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess we can relate it somewhat to Starship. So I just kind of want to just shift gears now to talk about what we got in store for us here in a week from Friday.
A week from
today, actually, folks. A week from today.
A week from today, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think, man?
Uh,
Star Wars: The Force Awakens. You've probably seen footage.
Oh, I've seen the footage, and I've also seen the footage of people watching the trailers.
You've seen the John Boyega reaction to the first trailer?
You mean the man weeping like a baby on the couch?
No, I haven't seen the man weeping on the baby like a baby on the couch. I probably need to check that out. But the guy who plays Finn in Star Wars, his buddy took a video of him the first time he hadn't seen any footage yet, and he saw the teaser trailer, and he just went insane.
Yeah.
And the reaction on his face, you could tell, he was just getting hyped up watching it, because he knows, you know, what's gonna happen, So seeing something cool like that, I mean, that really just started getting me pumped up for it, because I'm like, man, if the actors are this into it, it's not just promotion. You know what I'm saying? I think we're gonna have a legit fun time.
I would say so.
I think it'll be different. But still,
yes, it cannot be anything but different, but that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
What I think is happening is that the second trilogy, instead of becoming the culmination of this gigantic cultural movement that Star Wars ended up becoming the emblem for, in fact, turned back the clock, because it became such a disappointment in many ways.
Yeah.
That those who were expecting to have their generation's Star Wars validated within the same universe and within the same world, which had created that original great flaring of interest, in fact, found themselves having to return to the old stuff for inspiration for what Star Wars really was. So in that sense, the second trilogy was a massive misstep. Well, it was a massive misstep in many ways, but I think that it left the viewers very frustrated
and confused, I think, too.
And massively confused, because it was essentially, George Lucas's attempt to science fictionalize something that was much closer to fantasy. And I'm not just thinking about the midichlorian, although that was problematic. But I'm talking about the entire process of, there's this war, the clones, and to essentially take all these random comments that Obi-Wan had made in the first movie
and try to make a trilogy of films about them.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get like the Clone Wars. Okay, the Clone Wars can mean a lot of things, but you don't have to have them like that. Do we need that? Because if I create an army of clones, then who the hell cares about the war?
Well, my whole thing, going back to those, the main problem with the story that I had was, you've got a dictator who's in control of one side, and he's in control of the other side, and he's not even acting like this is all a game. Like if it had been one thing if Palpatine was just like, wringing his hands the whole time, like, entertainment, yes, But he wasn't even doing that.
No, he wasn't.
But it's Star Wars, so you gotta just, give him the benefit of the doubt there. But still, I totally agree with you. We've talked about it on the show, how the second trilogy, was such a disappointment and they missed so much. I've recently actually done commentary tracks for all the Star Wars films that I'm going to be releasing over the course of the next week.
Cool.
Finishing up doing all those, so get ready for next Friday. But yeah, I mean, in just going back and watching the original or the second trilogy again, I just there's just so many missteps that the little things that they could have changed that might have saved a lot.
Yeah, because the part of the problem is I mean, the acting is often wooden.
For sure.
Although Hayden Christensen actually did as fine a job as he could possibly have done with the material he had.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the I think that the problem is there were so many things that simply did not make sense in terms of, okay, this is the plot, this is what Palpatine is trying to do. Okay, so let me guess. This is by the way, I'm riffing off the Plinkett reviews, the Red Letter Media reviews. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for example, that was one of the points. So exactly, explain to me how, if you want to further your plan of creating a war, establishing a communications blockade, get word to the council, to the Senate, that there is even a problem.
Right.
Okay, or you're the Jedi, you need to warn the council, and what do? You go down with the army? What are you, stupid?
Oh, not only that, but even
there are so many illogical things that they start compounding on each other, and at that point, the story unravels under its own weight. It just collapses.
Yeah, exactly. The invasion in Naboo is my main thing in episode 1. Why are you going to drop everybody on the other side of the planet? Just drop them right in the city, Yeah. Palpatine obviously doesn't care if he's invading his hometown. He's sending them there to do it, So, yeah. So ridiculous. But, I mean, what have you seen from the Force Awakens stuff?
I've seen the first trailer and the latest release.
What stood out to you that you're like, wow?
Well, this is hardly going to sound to be original, but one of the high points was Han Solo.
Oh, of course.
For me. I mean, Chewie were home, and that poor guy, but he was a serious editor for a serious website. So we're not talking about one random fan who just taped himself. No, it was this guy who was doing a job, and when finally the new villain looks at Darth Vader's smashed, broken down mask,
melted.
He just started blubbering, and it was at once very sweet, completely weird, but well, look, it's and I mean, I do not have that intense a reaction when I watch Star Wars, but I have my own things that make me feel like weeping when I watch them. Okay, my own Star Wars thing was when I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Okay, because when I watched that, well, for me, I mean, there are things that I remember with an intensity. Right. That is quite so. And keep in mind, I was 5 years old when I went to watch the first Star Wars, A New Hope. Okay. in Italy, in Rome, inside at an Italian movie theater, dubbed in Italian.
Star Wars. Is that what they call it? Or what?
Guerre Stellari.
Guerra Stellari.
Yeah. Guerre Stellari. Which is literally Star Wars.
Okay.
By the way, R2-D2 in the Italian version was C1P8. Why? No one knows. You got to ask the people who did the dubbing. And I remember, and my reaction was pure terror, because Darth Vader walking into Princess Leia's ship at the very beginning, breathing like that,
choking a dude out.
With James Earl Jones's voice like that, and just really mad and angry and raspy, like, get me the planet and bring me any prisoner. I want them alive.
Yeah.
I was like, holy fuck, this guy's really mad.
Yeah.
And he's scary because he's got the panel with the light, the lights. He's breathing like that. What the hell is wrong with him? Why the mask? What? And then
he's got this red laser sword. What's going on?
Exactly. And so but for a kid like me, it was, of course, this massive psychological not blow in a bad sense, but I absorbed this completely. Just like I was just transparent to it. It just came through me like the wind and stayed inside, because this is what something of Star Wars quality does. And I think that a great deal of the enthusiasm, which is well justified, I think, is because we are indeed going to get that second great moment of cementing of this legacy that we failed to get between the end of the 90s at the beginning of the 2000s. So it was 97, 2005.
Yes.
These three beautiful and gorgeous, but also very, very difficult movies that frustrated people, but also you also love them because it is Star Wars.
Sure.
You are supposed to love them, but there are so many things that just don't make sense that it also hurts. And I'm using hurts in a very, very real sense, because stories matter. And
Absolutely.
of all the stories that we've done over the last 50 years, Star Wars has become, whether one likes that or not, one of the most powerful narratives. It has shaped our culture as surely as The Lord of the Rings has shaped fantasy.
Right. It almost seemed like A New Hope was like molded to be that ultimate story. I mean, Lucas, he got Joseph Campbell's help, in developing the story.
Exactly.
And Joseph Campbell, is famous for pretty much creating the hero's journey.
Yes,
we know it. So yeah, and that's what makes those so good. But going back to the guy blubbering watching it,
yeah.
I mean, it all comes down to the end. We can't be children anymore, and we know how we felt.
Or can we?
Well, I mean, I don't know why I just said that, because you're sitting in the middle of a studio full of comic books and Gundam.
But there's different, because the important difference with the studio full of beautiful Legos, by the way, and Gundams and comic books and everything. This is not childish stuff. This is childlike stuff. There is a difference between childish and childlike, and I would testify in court if necessary that the feelings that you get when you see Han Solo now with whitish hair, and Chewbacca, who, God knows why, remains exactly the same, and he says, "Chewie, we're home." If you don't feel at least a little bit of a shiver, then you're probably not alive.
right.
Because that I think is there are a lot of people who are not that into science fiction and who somehow find it offensively difficult to understand why people would make such a big deal out of stuff like that. And the funny thing is, it's often those same people who will weep if the Patriots win another Super Bowl.
Right.
Because that's the other side of it. It's always been geeks and jocks, right?
Right.
You get geeks and jocks and everything, and neither side understands why the hell the other puts so much stock in what they put stock in. But you can't explain passion.
Right.
You can't.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's funny.
But now. And the funny thing is that even now that the football fan has fantasy football. Hello, fantasy football. We're still not talking to each other because they're embarrassed that they took one step in our direction and they go, oh my God, it's like the great unwashed.
I know. I'm the hybrid, man. I mean, I'm heavy into sports and I'm heavy into geekdom. You know, I thank my father for that. You know, because he just taught me all about the sports and everything growing up. But and also real quick, I wanted to just briefly talk to you about Gundam. Gundam is one of your favorite manga series. Now is
anime because I never read.
Okay, so you never read the manga.
Yeah, I have to make it clear because I have not read. I mean, I've read the Akira manga,
right?
Which is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I have not read any other mangas. I've watched tons of anime because in the 1970s, Europe was flooded by dozens of Japanese anime series, and of course, the giant robots were among the great representatives of this. And I was a boy. I was a boy born in 1972, and I started watching Gundam when I was like 7, and
oh man,
yeah, exactly,
man.
man. It was I was the kind of kid. I was definitely. I've never been a jock in any way, shape, or form because I'm really not very strong, and I've at my very level best, I've never been better than indifferent as an athlete. So by nature and by inclination, I tend to favor whatever side my head gives me, and so I was kind of picked on at school, whatever. Nothing tragic, but and so for me, the idea that a little boy of that age could climb inside a monster of that size and fight against aliens and stuff like that. I mean, if he could do that, I could pick a Gundam and take it to school.
Right.
See who messes with me.
Right.
It's like, okay, fine. So it's a the Gundam. I mean, robots who could transform, and Gundam, especially Gundam, was. It was like the cat's pajamas.
Actually, I have a buddy of mine, Jarrell, back home in Virginia, where I'm from. He models Gundams, and he does the whole putting the LED light in the Gundams.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he like has the lights in there and everything.
This is serious.
Yeah. He's definitely got some serious Gundam modeling game, but. I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
I did. I really did.
What was your favorite Gundam series that you saw growing up?
Immediately. Well, the Gundam,
first one?
Yeah, the very first one. Yeah, Mobile Suit Gundam.
Set 0079? 007?
Yes. 0079. And it was.
What was it called in Italy?
Gundam.
Oh, it was Gundam. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or as in the town we pronounce it, Gundam.
Gundam.
Yeah. And yeah, no, it was phenomenal. Then growing up, I started watching others because I knew and of course, by the way, the stuff that comes from Japan, the work that they've done on the Gundam universe parallels the work that we crazy people have done on the Star Wars universe. I mean, you want to talk about because the simply plastic models. In fact, on 50 coming here.
Sci-Fi City?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or no anime. It's called Orlando Anime.
Okay.
It's a new store.
Okay.
You walk in. It's on 50.
Okay.
Not long before hitting Forsyth.
Okay.
And I went there, and there is everything, manga, anime. You got models of everything, and you.
You're hearing this drill? You're going to be here in a couple weeks, so I just want you to know.
Yeah, drill. Yeah, you go, man, and you too, by the way. But it's an important it's an important point that the Gundam universe has been imaginatively transformed by the collective imagination of the Japanese people into something resembling the great expansion of the Star Wars universe and Star Trek universes, for example, that we have brought about in our own culture, because you get models of Gundam you've never even seen anywhere, and I'm willing to bet that there are stories and specials connected to those Gundams that we don't have, although we were eager enough to get the newest stuff every time it becomes available. But there is an enormous amount of stuff, and indeed, one of my favorite film of 2013 was Pacific Rim. Why? Because if you grew up like me, loving that kind of stuff, how do you not, at the beginning of the movie when you see Gypsy Danger just walk,
the montage in the beginning, that's what sold me. I was like, what is going on?
With that music, with that and then you see the reactor turn on, and then the really great thing that they did is they made Gypsy Danger and all the other Jaegers and the Kaijus look so solid that it doesn't matter that it's absurd. It compels belief, because that's how you use a special effect meaningfully.
Right. Yes.
Are you listening, Michael Bay? He's probably not listening, but why should he? But never mind. But yeah, it is. Every plate, every armor plate, everything moves according to how the robot even shifts stance. Yeah. And you see this thing walk. And the two guys
takes two people to control it.
And the idea of the drift, and it's such a powerful notion that everything else is absurd. Okay, from the fact that one of the pilots is never told about the large sword that they have,
or they want to stop him with a sandbag,
and everything. Okay, so that doesn't make sense, but it is this almost primal vision of this seemingly utterly realized thing, this man of metal. It's like watching Frankenstein's monster who got a makeover. It's like, and he's made peace with Dad, and now he's protecting the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it is and Guillermo del Toro himself has traced the origin of the Jaegers right back to when he was a kid and when he was watching, lo and behold, Japanese anime.
Yes.
Just like us.
They need to get that movie fast-tracked, the sequel.
When I heard that we were going to have to wait until 2017, I was at once really thrilled and really bummed.
Right. Well, at least we got Star Wars coming. We got two Star Wars films actually before Pacific Rim 2.
By the way, another scene that I truly loved was the I think it's Tatooine, the scene of Tatooine with that Star Destroyer half buried, and that speeder just driving by. It is such a powerful scene, because it is like the Star Wars that we watched is indeed now archaeology. We are mining that to make this. Right. And the people are still there, but it is no longer what it used to be.
Well, see, that's my whole thing about this is when they initially showed that, I said the same thing you did. Tatooine, right? That's where we are. But apparently it's this planet called Jakku. I don't understand why you're going to stick them on another desert planet and it not be Tatooine. Now, my theory could be that it is no longer called Tatooine.
This was what I was about to say that, yeah.
Now, also, too, I just went to Disney a couple days ago, and I did Star Tours, and I got to ride the Jakku sim. They've added 2 new sims in there, and I got to ride one of the new ones, and it was amazing.
If you keep this up, you're going to be disappointed at the movie.
Yeah, right.
Through no fault of the movie itself.
Well, I mean, it was a 5-minute ride over the desert. Blew up a couple TIE fighters and whatnot. It was pretty
good for you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think this is going to probably put a wrap here on another episode of the Giant Size Annual. Simone, thank you so much for joining me for the last hour, man.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, and you got to come back on.
Oh, I am.
Like whenever you want to.
Please, I was so sad when you were going to record and you sent me the message on Facebook, and I wasn't going to be there because I was away. I was out of town on vacation.
Yes.
And the vacation was wonderful, but I did I do regret missing that chance. So
Well, we've made it all up and then some, I think, in this.
Yeah, no, this was wonderful. Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you everybody for listening. And I hope that the new Star Wars movie is everything you were hoping it will be.
Do you have you got any promotional material you want to lay out there for everyone? Well, I mean, I'm telling them to go to Amazon right now, look up Simone Caroti and buy his books.
Well, SIMONE CAROTI. Please help a starving critic. We don't get much public, but although some of us deserve it. was that a good promo? You think
that was about as best as you possibly could do.
I don't think Full Sail will ever hire me for marketing because I don't think. They said we wouldn't do that to you, but you're too honest. Like, okay, fine, whatever.
Well, for Simone Caroti, I'm Matt D. Simone. Please join us again as we come to part 3 of Matty Loves Podcast next week. As oh my gosh, Star Wars: A Force Awakens will be in theaters, folks.
Yes.
Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week. Later.
Bye.
Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.